What's going on, you guys? It's your Huggable Hipster here, and welcome back to another episode of Soulsborne Academy. Please take your seats, have your notebooks and pens ready, and don't be alarmed if there is a hunter nearby. They're just here for your safety. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day today. We're going to be diving into a melange of topics. I actually asked you guys on Twitter, right over here, where if you guys have any questions or if you guys have like things that you're stuck on and you need help with, I got you. So there was a lot of, you guys really went ham with a lot of these responses and everything that I got. There was one that was item usage, which is one of the topics we're going to be diving into today. Blocking and parrying. A lot of you guys showed examples of the first boss battle that you encounter in the Pthumerian chamber. So that is one boss battle that I'm actually going to be dissecting with you guys so you understand how to parry it. I have to beat it first myself. I saw a lot of people take it on, especially fighting Cowboy. That's actually how I learned how to go into that boss battle, was through him, through the false depths. Thank you so much, dude. Builds and weapon selection, camera angles, different spells and weapons. There was a lot. My mod Peter was like, I struggle with everything. I feel you. Parrying timing, sitting down and actually playing the games. You just got to do it. Okay. Just do what Shia LaBeouf says. Just do it. There is no right time to play a Souls game. It's kind of like, for those of you who have kids, I don't have a child. I'm never going to have a child. But I've heard this with a lot of parents. Like, it's just like having a child. There is no right time to have one. If you're gonna do it, you just gotta do it. Build progression. Okay, so this is actually one that I'm saving from for a different video, for a different Soulsborne Academy. This one comes from Senator Kem the Paladin. I love that username. And he said, build progression. Sometimes it's difficult for me to make the builds I want to use with the weapons I like. I normally go for quality build, but Elden Ring made me change it up and go quality magic. This is a very intensive topic, and I'm going to be diving into it for the next Soulsborne Academy. So thank you so much for that. I don't know why I'm making sound effects with my mouth. What is this? This is not Whose Line Is It Anyway? Okay, so let's get into this video. I'm going to be covering 3 of the topics that I got from you guys. Some of the other ones I'm going to be covering, like I said, in another Soulsborne Academy video. But for right now, we're going to be going over sitting down to actually play the game. I know I've covered this before, but I want to reiterate some points. Item usage, parrying, and talking about the first boss in the Pthumerian chambers, which again, it will go back to parrying. Sitting down and actually playing the game. You want to keep in mind that these games define certain parts of our gaming culture, the memes, you know, Praise the Sun. I had no idea what Praise the Sun was until I actually started playing a Dark Souls game. In all seriousness, when it comes down to actually sitting down and playing the game, I feel like nobody discusses the order in which you should play these. Keep in mind, objectively, there is no said order, but this is the order that I find is the most comfortable to play this. Keep in mind, I did this in the order that I thought was most like reasonable to play the Souls games in. So this is completely just not objective. This is subjective. Play the games however you feel like, darling. I just want to encourage you to play them in a way of where it is most beneficial to how a playstyle is going to evolve. And I know I've said this order before, but I'm going to go at it in case there are new people who are watching this. So the first one that you should go at is Dark Souls 1. Please play this one first, that way you understand just how much we suffer. Not suffering as much as you will understand that you need to play the game by its rules. You can't go at it like the Evil Within. You can't go at it like, you know, any regular type of game. Dark Souls is its own masterpiece in a sense of where it really demands a lot from the player, to which you need to understand how its rules work so that you can just go with the flow with its rules, if that makes sense. So Dark Souls 1 really gives you an idea of how the entire structure of Dark Souls is set up so you can really understand the franchise. Next up, I would highly recommend playing Bloodborne. That's the game I played after I played Dark Souls 1, and I absolutely loved it. I understood the mechanics of Dark Souls, so I thought, okay, this is going to be kind of the same thing, but in a way, it's different. While I understood that, yes, the game wants me to play by its rules, it also bent the rules a little bit and was a lot quicker. The next one that I dove into was Sekiro. I don't know whether or not this was a mistake or one of the best things I ever did, but yeah, the next one after I played Bloodborne was Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. It was one of the most infuriating yet absolutely amazing games I ever played. Because Sekiro Shadows Die Twice challenged me in a way that Dark Souls and Bloodborne did not. It challenged me in a different way. It had faster response time. There was no clunky control work. It was very seamless and very smooth, but the bosses were a lot harder. You had to know how to defeat the bosses. There really wasn't a cheese with them. Unless you play on PC and can get past certain things and can do certain breaking abilities with the game, shall we say. There really is no cheesing or getting past these bosses like there is in Bloodborne or Dark Souls. You really have to understand their movements, and you have to learn what their movements are in order to beat them. Then after Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, I went into Dark Souls 3, and that might have been the easiest Souls game I ever played because I played Dark Souls, and I played Bloodborne, and then I went in immediately to Sekiro. Okay? Doing all of those and then playing Dark Souls 3, it will be a cakewalk, trust me. Again, not saying you have to do this, but this is the best order in which I have experienced playing any kind of game in any series. Then after that, I went in to play some of the DLCs from Dark Souls 3, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm a bit Dark Souls tuckered out. I still haven't finished them yet, but I will at some point. They're fun. They're really fun. I went in instead to try to platinum Bloodborne, and I'm almost there. I still have like 3 things to achieve before I platinum Bloodborne, but it's getting there. I went in to play the DLC, as you guys know. I did a playthrough of it on YouTube, and it was, again, easy because I have that muscle memory, and I know a lot of Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Sekiro players will say this too, of where you get that muscle memory, and you just understand how the game wanted you to play, so you keep that up. Even if you come back to the game months later, you still understand how to play it because you had that experience of playing the first Dark Souls, or, you know, whichever Dark Souls you played. And you understand it becomes a part of you in a sense of where you get that muscle memory. So this is basically a long form way of saying just start at any time, because there's not going to be a time where it's ever going to be the perfect time. You know, now is a better time than any to just sit down, play around with the game, die a lot, understand how the mechanics work. As clunky as they are, it's a part of the charm of the world of Dark Souls. Now you're probably sitting there wondering, Ariel, you didn't mention Dark Souls 2. Is your seething hatred for it that deep? No, my seething hatred goes very deep for the government, not Dark Souls. So again, no, I'm not going to be discussing Dark Souls 2 because that would be unfair of me to discuss a game I have not finished. Next up, we're going to discuss item usage, and this answer is going to sound very generic, but it's very true. Just play the way you want to play with it. There isn't a correct or wrong way to use your items, or a wrong way to get a good amount of usage out of your items. There are embers, there are green blossoms, there are transient curses, there are different things that you can use, but if it's not beneficial to your playstyle, then you really don't have to use them. There's one thing actually I had to look up. There was one item, I forgot what the usage of it was, but it was the Rite of the Kindling, and some players will really run straight to the catacombs so they can get this specific item. This item allows players to kindle with bonfires up to 3 times instead of once, allowing players to carry up to 20 Estus flasks instead of 5 or 10. Pinwheel drops this item as he can be found in the catacombs adjacent to Firelink Shrine. A lot of new players aren't going to know this or know how to necessarily utilize this. I know I didn't until like my second playthrough, I think. So when you're first getting into Dark Souls and you're first really trying to understand the games and its mechanics and everything that it has to offer, don't worry about item usage. Don't worry about what items you're collecting. Don't worry about any of that. Just play through the game and do what you feel is most instinctually normal, to say the least, for you to do during the game. There's also things known as Titanite fragments, of where you can up the ante on your weapons tenfold with using these things. I think it's one of the most important items to look for, but a beginner player won't know that, so they won't know to really get these items. So one thing I would heavily recommend is, again, if you're a new player, don't worry so much about item usage. Don't worry so much about trying to collect every little thing and being very nitpicky and trying to have the best build, because in all honesty, when you're first playing the game, you won't have the best build. You're still learning and you're still growing and you're still trying to understand the mechanics and the world overall and its story. The least of your worries is trying to get a good build. But if you're on your second and third gameplay, you already know what kind of things make a good build subjectively. So you're going to probably look out for those Titanite shards. You're going to look out for those Firekeeper Firekeeper souls so you can up the ante on your Estus flasks. Another thing I would recommend, if it's your second playthrough of Dark Souls and you're still having issues with item management or how to use what items for which thing, go on different websites and see what items are great for which builds. Trust me, there are so many different articles on these. It would take me eons to cover everything, but there are different things for different builds. If you're a magic build, you want to use certain types of things for your sword or your staff or something like that. One thing I would highly recommend though, if you are a new player of Dark Souls, please, if you listen to anything I say, please listen to this. And you see a diamond shard, like a diamond stone or something of those lines to upgrade your sword, don't take it. Don't take it. You're going to get a few hits out of that thing and then it's going to break, and you don't want that. So please, if you are a new player and you have your main weapon, keep your main weapon and don't use a diamond shard or anything like that for your weapon, because it'll instantly break it and then you'll have to find a new weapon and upgrade that thing all over again. Saying that from experience, because I did that on my first playthrough. Make a mandatory weapon and then get a secondary weapon and use the diamond for that. You will see a powerhouse of a weapon that will break instantaneously. This is one hell of a topic that I feel like I need to make multiple videos on, because when you're parrying, each boss has its own telltale sign of when you are supposed to parry it. For example, Lady Maria, if you were going to parry her, she is probably one of the most easiest bosses to parry in the entirety of Bloodborne. Her signs are so clear, it's ridiculous. She goes up and she pauses, that's your time to parry. When you see Orphan of Kos and he lifts his, sack over his head and he's there for like a good second, that's your time to parry. Keep in mind, when you're parrying in Bloodborne, it is way different than when you are parrying in Dark Souls. Dark Souls parrying is like, it's like trying to learn a new language. It's the best way I can describe it. When you're parrying in Dark Souls, you have to really time it very well because the windows of opportunity for parrying are very small. But in Bloodborne, you have a larger window of opportunity with parrying. All of the videos that were sent to me under the tweet that I did were with the first boss of the Pthumerian Chambers. So that's why I'm going to be working on that boss to try to see if I can do a more in-depth video on how to parry, because me explaining parrying is different from me showing you how to parry. When I learned how to parry, it was in Sekiro, because you had to learn how to parry with Genichiro. Learning how to parry is one of the most fundamental things in this entire series that From Software has created, because it allows you to get enemies and do more things in a quicker amount of time, also in a more stylistic way, if I do say so myself. Parrying allows you to really get a lot more bang for your buck. That's why I always suggest to people. Yeah, so I'm going to be doing a separate video on parrying and then the other thing that I mentioned, but that's basically it. There are different telltale signs. That's why I say all the time, dying is not a bad thing whenever it comes to your character in Bloodborne. Or Dark Souls or Sekiro, because that's how you find out how to parry your enemy. It's the best thing in the world. You like go and do that thing of where I suggested, like do a big circle around to see what attacks linger. Very important what I just said. See what attacks linger. If you have like a motion of like, they do like a thing of where their attack is really, really slow, that's more or less your sign to parry them. Another thing that, when it comes into parrying, when it comes into that guy who looks like a vampire in the Pthumerian Chambers, the very first boss, if he goes very, very slow up, you have to do it whenever his hand is like just a little bit past his head, if that makes sense. So there are different signs for different enemies when you are supposed to parry. It's very in-depth and it's very like it's very much its own thing, but once you get the hang of it, you'll start to notice when these telltale signs start making more of an appearance, because once you notice it once, you'll be able to notice it for all different enemies. But yeah, I'm gonna work on that boss, that way I can make a video for you guys in more depth of parrying, because I think it's crucial. There are a lot of videos on parrying, but not really too many explaining in depth, I feel, about what the what the signs are for where you should be. There are, but there aren't. It's kind of like a mixed bag, if you will. Hey, you guys, that was it for today's Soulsborne Academy episode. If you guys like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. We are at the halfway mark for watch time. I said to you guys on Twitter that we're there. We're at like 2,200 hours. So keep watching the videos. Let's do this. I'm really excited to hit partner. I'm very, very excited. I'm doing the full-on partner push right now. May you find your worth in the waking world, dear hunter. Stay casually nerdy, and I will see you all in the next video. See you guys.